Welcome everyone to another episode of Inside the Industry. Today we are joined by a true revolutionary creative and one of the National Black Justice Collective's 2025 cohort of 100 Black LGBTQ plus SGL emerging leaders to watch. She is a philanthropist, organizer, published model, cosplayer. As I'm going through this intro, you will see just how amazing she is, but we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. She is the visionary founder and CEO of HBCU a groundbreaking movement celebrating and bridging the gap between historically black institutions and geek culture, with the next HBCU Geek Fest happening June 7th of 2026. In addition to costumes and cosplay and culture, she is a human rights advocate, having led the alternative spring break at Bowie State, and has driven equity initiatives as the associate director of the HBCU program at the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, where one of her most creative accomplishments was the Renaissance syllabus, a curriculum built and designed around the themes of Beyonce's Renaissance album. An ambassador for Black Market, one of Maryland's only Black-owned vertically integrated cannabis companies, a partner in Kuya, a Maryland-based company who believes in story experiences and just lifted community moments. On the board of MagFest, a 4-day festival here in Maryland celebrating video game music, community with everything you could possibly imagine, working as a marketing and branding consultant for the Fort Worth African American Roots Music Festival. Chauna, welcome to the show. Welcome to Inside the Industry. I know that I probably have missed maybe a few things that we'll uncover within the scope of this conversation, but safe to say, accomplished is an understatement.
Thank
And
you. You did
community.
that. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. I
So
really
I'm
do.
trying to figure out where to even start. Well, I guess we'll start with how are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Like I said earlier, before we started recording, I'm always blessed to be in the company of good people, especially on a good podcast. So I'm excited. I'm ready to get into it. How are
Absolutely.
you?
I'm busy. I'm recovering.
Real.
You know what I
That's
mean?
real.
I appreciate just like you being in spaces where you can be with like-minded folk. Folk that have not only a myriad of interests but creative passions and professional ideas, and just seeing how the intersection of all those things just contribute to just amazing work. So I like being surrounded by folk that are doing amazing things, that are passionate about the work that they're doing. So it's definitely a privilege being able to, have this conversation with you. The initial, I knew of you prior to our involvement as a sponsor for HBCU one of the past ones. I knew you just because of seeing you in different spaces and knowing you through somebody else. So
Okay.
one of the
Wow.
things that I think people will find if they follow you on social media is just how many folk you know that they also know. So I knew a bunch of folk over at Bowie State, like
Yeah.
T.O. and just so I was like, oh, she knows them and them and them and him and her. Again, a testament to how much work you're doing that's community focused, because I think people gravitate towards work that resonates with community. So seeing folk that I admire and respect also following you, complimenting you on your work, trying to partner up with you on some of the initiatives that you're doing, again, it just reinforces the type of stuff that you're doing and how focused it is on being community driven, how amazing it is. So thank you again for taking time out to have a conversation with me about all things inside and outside the industry that I think people will be very amazed to hear about the intersections.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You should take up being a motivational speaker. You're like really good at it. But no, seriously, I'm just honored to be here and and thankful to be in this space and I'm really grateful to, you and Peake really for being so supportive of me and of HBCU Con. Like it really means the world to us and for you to kind of just get it, like that's always the best thing, when folks kind of just get it. So I'm really grateful for that and for you, for this space.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. I mean, as soon as, Carlo, shout out to Carlo over at Kuya, as soon as he mentioned, oh, there's this going on, I said, okay, well, just what's the sponsorship like look
Yeah.
like? He didn't even give me all the details. He was like, oh, there's this, and they're going to be, no, what's the sponsorship look like? I'm
Yeah.
already, you sold me on the concept. I
Yeah.
need to know how I can be involved and put some resources behind this.
Right, right. I
Um,
love it.
and so even with that, just talking about this type of space that HBCU Con is and what that looks like, that's that safe space and how that's cultivated. I know you take pride in creating those types of spaces for marginalized communities, for black and brown folk, for LGBTQIA plus folk. What does the concept of a safe space specifically mean for you within the concept of black geekdom and the LGBTQ plus community? And what are the unique threats that you're fighting to mitigate? I know we've kind of talked about this in part, but just can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, and it's interesting, in a lot of activist spaces, I've heard that there is no such thing as a safe space. When you kind of think about it, and I guess that's, it's very much valid. So, like, ultimately, my job is to create spaces that are as safe as I can possibly make them, like within my realm of control. When it comes to like security, when it comes to health measures, when it comes to just like the behavior and conduct that's expected of folks, even from me, like me, like kind of leading by example, the staff, how I treat them and how I expect them to treat each other and treat our clients and stuff, and it kind of just goes from there. So that's really like paramount to me because I know what it's like to be in spaces where I don't feel safe, whether it's physically or otherwise. So I kind of am really hinged on that. Like it's really much, and I think the team would agree that it's very much our priority to make sure that we can create spaces where not only people feel as safe as they possibly could feel, but they also feel like they're celebrated and they feel like they can like just be themselves and it not be an afterthought, but it be like something that's seen as really cool and unique. So that's really kind of I think what makes our events and I think nerd events in general special. And then you were asking your other question, about what issues I'm trying to litigate. That's I don't that's I'm not gonna say it's a loaded question, but wow, that's something I never really heard in those words. Of course, like why I heard somebody say that the B is the most important letter in HBCU. So when it comes to racism, I think that's something that kind of goes without saying when it comes to HBCU Con and what we stand for, what we're about. We're, we're definitely for the liberation of black people and just anyone who's like marginalized. And I think intersectionality is like a huge part of that. Myself being a black woman, being a black queer woman, and for those who don't know, I identify as bisexual. I feel like it's important for me to say that now more than ever, just to let folks know that it's like it's okay, and to let other folks in the community know that like, hey, we're here, we're queer, we're here to stay, we're like actually moving and shaking things in the community. So, but being at those like intersections has kind of really given me a lot of insight just through my lived experience to see that like there's so many different intricacies between like transphobia, misogynoir, colorism, fat phobia, ableism, ageism. There's like so many different things that I feel like we're up against. But ultimately, I think that when you center the folks who are the most systemically disadvantaged, that a high tide lifts all boats, and things just kind of ebb and just kind of flow from there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think we've talked a little bit about some of that intersectionality, some of those things that we see as similar issues that exist for marginalized communities in the geek space, in the cannabis space. Obviously, one of the things we've talked about was that people in the cannabis community like to do other things. Like cannabis isn't the sole aspect of their identity, which is one of the reasons why it was like, oh, of course we'll be a HBCU con because there are folk that love gaming and love anime and love manga and love all things nerd and geek culture
Yeah.
that also consume cannabis, but they also want a
Facts.
space where they can be their authentic selves
Yeah.
without the threat of being ostracized.
Facts.
And if you're already a cannabis consumer, there's a layer of feeling ostracized already in a lot of ways. So layering that with, oh, I also like this, niche form of media that, is fairly mainstream still, but still people kind of consider it niche sometimes. You don't want to feel unsafe in a space specifically tailored for, your unique interests and what you identify with and as.
Yeah. And that feeling and that lack of safety when it comes to for like black people particularly is like so much more complex. So I appreciate you saying that, because we've been disproportionately criminalized for it and stigmatized for it.
And one of the things, as I mentioned before, you as an ambassador for Black Market, again, you're at the intersection of so many different things. But I wanted to ask, just based on your experiences outside of the industry, and then coming into the industry and just being even more involved, what are some of the most significant and overlooked, let's say, human rights failures that you feel like you may see perpetuated within the cannabis industry? And maybe you've seen those outside, but are you seeing things that you saw outside of the cannabis industry now that you're in it? You see it existing here that needs to be addressed?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I mean, I haven't been a part of it for too. I've been kind of like on the like right at the front door, because Carlo's been like conversing with me. We've been friends, for like the past few years actually, but we hadn't really like actually done any real work together until like I want to say maybe last in the last year or two. So I consider myself still very much a newbie. I mean, I will say that pretty much every community that I've been in is like a microcosm of the real world, right? They just have varying degrees and some traits are more exasperated than others in certain places. I think the one thing about the cannabis community that I probably noticed that stands out more than anything else is that it's pretty polarized in the sense that like everybody's really cool, you kind of have one side where everybody's really cool, they get along, there's community and things like that, and then you have one side where they're like profit focused essentially, you know what I'm saying, and they have their own like machine that they got going on. So and I guess that's much like any other industry, you know what I mean, when you like go Hollywood versus being like an independent artist, right?
Right.
So, and what are the complexities and things you have to deal with? But for the most part, I've been oh, and then the only other thing is that it's definitely like when it comes to, it reminds me a lot of like the women's rights movement in the sense that like there are a lot of black women on the ground who are doing the work, who are like putting the things together, doing the organizing, but the folks at the top and most of the faces of the movement, and applies to civil rights as well, are like white women. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like it's kind of the same thing with the cannabis industry where you have a lot of people who are like moving and shaking it, who are folks of color and women and things of that nature. But when it comes to who actually has ownership of the thing, then that's when the numbers are like, whoa. So yeah.
No, I ain't speak on it.
Yeah.
There's so many different events that I've been to over the like cannabis related events that I've been to over the years. I remember Cannabis Science Conference. So many different speakers were black and brown women, scientists, business owners, and it made me wonder why it's so easy to kind of platform them in a space like a conference, but not when it comes to recognizing them for their contributions or their business acumen outside of the conference. So again, it's like if you need them to speak at your event to bring value to the event, as opposed to spotlighting them on their own merits outside of what they can do for you and the labor that they provide.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of that in the cosplay community too. There's so much like exploitation and clout chasing, if you will, you know. Um, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was about to ask you actually a question about cosplaying.
Okay.
So that works.
Okay.
As a cosplayer, I
Yes.
know that you physically embody characters and the narratives associated with those characters.
Mm.
And the reason why I thought of this question was because I was wondering how the creative act of incarnation in that way and storytelling
Hmm.
intersect with your philanthropic work in terms of making concepts that feel abstract like equity or human rights tangible for people. So you've done that outside of the cannabis industry. You're doing that within the cannabis industry. You're taking things that people may not associate an immediate visual with because it's an abstract concept. Equity can be very abstract and it can mean different things to different people. Clearly, we've seen that. Human rights can mean different things to different people. But as a cosplayer, you kind of a master of taking abstract concepts, characters, narratives, and giving them a voice, giving them life, being able to present them in a way that people can see them and that they become more tangible for folk. So in that same way, like how do you do that with equity and human rights, do you feel?
I think that's really a cool thing. That's so cool that you would ask that question. You're asking really good questions. Um, well, I think on the cosplay side of it, like a lot of the media for whom the characters like are based in, right, is they already have socio-political undertones. So I think that makes it kind of easy, right? And a friend once told me that because she was like, because one day I cosplayed Princess Aurora, basically Sleeping Beauty, and that kind of threw her off because I did it not as a favor, but I did it as a cosplay duo with another friend of mine, Mia Milan, who cosplayed Maleficent, right?
Mm,
So I was just like, why were you so shocked? I'm like, was it the pink? She's like, it's not necessarily the pink. It's just that you're known to cosplay very like powerful characters, right? And for me, that was my own way of kind of taking my power back or really taking ownership of my power. And I got to kind of channel really my confidence, you know, in a lot of ways doing that. So I feel like, and that's something that always came naturally for me when it came to my philanthropic work, maybe because I've just been doing it for so long, but also just because that's kind of how I was raised, you know. My family, you know, they all did public service on one degree or another. They were either first, you know, my dad's a retired police officer, so I had a lot of family who were first responders, prior military. My mom worked for NIH for many years under the leadership of Dr. Fauci. So, you know, and then also I had a lot of educators in my family. My stepmother's a guidance counselor. And I have like folks down in my lineage who were like pretty much civil rights leaders. You know, like my great uncle who passed away, Howard Robert Lee Cook. He worked for the Library of Congress and led a class action discrimination lawsuit against the Library of Congress. And he actually wrote a book about it, but there's like several case studies on him in like law and stuff like that. I had another uncle, Charles Day, who was the first black man to have a tenure track position at Chapel Hill's law school, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And he actually got his start at North Carolina Central and was the dean of the law school there prior to him going to Chapel Hill, and did a lot of work in housing discrimination and like housing rights. So it was kind of just like in my blood to do that type of stuff. And I always got a real sense of fulfillment. And really, what turned the tide for me was my first trip to New Orleans when I went for Hurricane Katrina relief in 2007. Yeah. And it was so wild to me because it was 2 years after the storm, but it was like the storm had happened like less than a month ago. You know, the way the city, the infrastructure, and everything. And I went with a small Baptist group at the time, and it was a combination of students from Bowie. It was only like 10 Bowie students, and then most of the other students were from University of Maryland and Anne Arundel Community College, I believe. So it was pretty, long story short, it was a mostly white group of students, and they were very disconnected, let's just say, from the population of New Orleans and like the experiences that they were having and the racial divide of the experiences that folks were having down there. So when I came back, actually, when we were down there, we saw a group of Howard students in the French Quarter. It had to be like maybe 300 of them. So when I saw them there, I just thought, why couldn't Bowie State do the same thing, right? So I went back to Bowie. I went to the director of the honors program because I was part of the honors student organization. Her name's Dr. Gross. She's still there, child. I love her to death. And she sent me to the then vice president of student affairs, Dr. Artie Travis. And he's like the best, man. So he just pretty much helped me see the idea to fruition. And ever since then, you know, Bowie has had a like official alternative spring break program. It's had some years where they, you know, kind of went dormant, but they're still around now. So it's just a really cool thing to see manifest. And that was really, I know I'm like going all around Robin Hood's barn with this, but the experiences and the things that I witnessed doing post Katrina relief really solidified the fact that I wanted to make a life helping people however I could, whatever that looked like. Yeah.
A rich lineage. See, you describe not only the things that you're doing, but just how many people in your family have been dedicated to black liberatory causes throughout their lives. And, you know, it's clear to see that through line and the energy from that you take into the cosplay space as well as the cannabis space. I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's important to lift up those folks up because I wouldn't be here, you know, if not for like we all wouldn't be here if not for the work of the people whose shoulders we stand on. And I think folks need to know that like these are real people, you know, like my Uncle Sibo my Uncle Howard, we called him Uncle Sibo. He's a real person, you know, and my Uncle Charles, and they were like really cool. So, you know, those stories matter. So thank you for listening.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for just giving us that kind of insight in terms of just how far reaching your efforts have been. And again, just how you've been influenced by, you know, people in your family that have done similar work, groundbreaking work. As I was like trying to replay the question.
Yeah,
From
yeah.
your perspective as a community organizer, what do you feel like is the simplest and most immediate action that a cannabis company could take to transition from tokenism to actually supporting Black, Brown, LGBTQIA plus led events and advocacy organizations like the ones that you're a part of?
Wow. I think the first thing that I think of, and this doesn't apply to cannabis companies, I think this applies to anyone, whether you have a company or whoever, is that you start with yourself. Start with how you treat yourself and the people who are in closest proximity to you. So, like, ultimately, if you can do all the hashtagging, you can donate, like, I'll gladly take your money myself, child, but you can do all of that, but if it doesn't transcend to, like, your hiring process, if it doesn't transcend to the communities that you engage with in real life, the people that you engage with in real life, and how you engage with them, then it's kind of null and void, right? And that's like the simplest thing you can do is to start there, is to start with just making sure that you keep yourself in check, not just with how you treat others, but with how you treat yourself. Because I think a lot of times how we treat ourselves can ultimately transcend to how we treat other people, right? But getting away from tokenism, I think, is like, one, of course, you want to make sure that you're involving yourself and lifting up not just one, that you have more than one person working in your dispensary or in your community vicinity or whatever, but it's also having people at the table who aren't like on your string. You know what I mean? Like, it's not on a shout when I tell you to shout type of basis. Some people, the table shifts when you invite someone else to the table, and you need to be okay with that. And you need to be ready to implement real change and not just provide lip service, which is very indicative of a lot of, white liberalist practices. They'll kind of tell you, oh, yeah, we really want you to voice your opinion and do all that. And then when you actually say something, it's kind of met with, with apprehension, or they just kind of look at you and smile, and then nothing ever happens beyond that. So I think that those are kind of cornerstone, and to be willing to share the wealth, like, you're not going to have to, there's more than enough room for everybody to succeed, and that you're not going to have to, like, give up your position, or whatever you think you're giving up, outside of maybe white privilege, and I promise you, it's not going to be as bad as you think it is. But like,
Right, right.
just take it one day at a time. Know that you're not going to always have the answers. Be open to learning. Hire people who know what they're doing. Pay them what they're worth. And just like, just do the right thing, man. Just do the right thing. I don't know how much more simple I can put it than that.
So I think the follow up to that, what I was going to ask you was, that was a really good, advice for cannabis companies, whether in the new or established market, about what they can do internally, to kind of reduce again that tokenism, to show support for these marginalized communities that are leading events and advocacy organizations. I think the second part to that, or kind of like a piggybacking onto that, I was going to ask, because you're gaining more and more experience within this space, working with Black Market, for instance, working with Kuya, where do you feel like the most common blind spots are, or missed opportunities, that you see when cannabis companies try to market or engage with Black and brown communities?
Mostly meeting people where they are. Like, going to, like, those communities and kind of just being open to hearing them out. Like, what is it that they want? Having more of a community based approach, which is something that I really appreciate from you, Black Market and Kuya, quite frankly, is that you all really see the value and kind of going beyond just your cannabis, like, industrial ecosystem, if you will, and thinking outside the box and working with organizations like HBCU Con to really like reach out and touch your people, right? Because a lot of times, even for me, before I became a part of this industry, what I would consider like a casual user, where I go to the dispensaries and I get the stuff, but I don't really know, what I am smoking. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I do, but not like to the point where I know the brands, right? And now that I'm like in it, it's so funny because I've seen the labels and stuff, and to see like the people and to meet the people behind it is just its own. It adds its own other cool element that I think really makes people. It really makes people like brand loyalty or brand. You can have a good product, or you can have a product that's not necessarily like the highest, THC or whatever. But if it's like a solid product and you have, a good community and a good team behind it, then folks will like really be loyal to you.
Yeah. Gotta free my people from the trap of only high THC products being the only thing
Right.
worth getting.
That too. I think that's another thing too, is like dispelling a lot of the myths and misconceptions about cannabis, and like and the THC hype or whatever. What's really important? How do you know what's important, and like what are the different effects that certain like why do terpenes even matter? Like I hear people talk about it, but it's like no one's ever really broken down why I should care about that. You know what I'm saying? So, it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.